Hi everyone, my name is Christy and I'm at Next Time Around, and I wanted to give you everything that you would need to get started to do a basic acrylic pour, which we're going to do today, something called the dirty pour technique. So we're going to talk about the basic supplies to get you started, everything you kind of need to know to get your hands dirty and start playing with the acrylic pours. So this is the first video. We're going to be doing lots of different videos showing you lots of different tutorials, but this is the first ones that you'll need to kind of get an idea of an overview of the supplies. So to start, you're going to need Floetrol. This is something that in Canada is available at Dulux Paint Store. I paid about $25 for this almost 4-liter container. I've done lots of dirty pours and I don't even know, it's barely empty, so it will last you a long time. It does come in different sizes. Your other option as a pouring medium is to use the Liquitex pouring medium. I have to say I like the Floetrol better. This one's more expensive, available at places like Michael's, Hobby Lobby, places like that. But either or is one of the things that you'll use as a pouring medium. And we'll probably do another video on different pouring mediums later on, but if you were to get one, I would recommend investing in Floetrol. And again, it comes in different sizes. So you'll need that. You're going to need a little bit of rubbing alcohol. Okay, so we'll have that there. Then you need silicone. Silicone is something that gives you your paints those beautiful cells. And I'm gonna kid you not, but this coconut milk hair serum gives you awesome cells. So this is, again, something at Shoppers Drug Mart. Even the most grocery stores probably carry that, but this one works great. The other one that's an option that you'll hear people talk about is silicone, which we were talking about having that in there. The silicone, this is treadmill silicone that I got, they came in 3 bottles like this at Canadian Tire. But anywhere where you would probably get exercise equipment would have this silicone. So either of these work great for creating cells. They're optional. You don't necessarily want to use this on all your pours, but if you like those great cells, they're great to have. So that's 2 options. Then you're going to need some plastic cups and stir sticks to stir your paint to prepare for that. We're going to talk about the heat gun. This is something that you don't have to have, but definitely this little torch. This is for making those creme brulees. So again, I got this at Canadian Tire. It's about $35. It takes butane that you'll get a container of. This is really great for popping air bubbles and everything at the end, because you don't want to have this great pour and then have all these little bubbles drawing on it at the end. So you don't have to have one of these, but they're fun to play with, so you'll want one. Then a pair of rubber gloves, which I might just take this pair, and of course a canvas. Okay, and your paints, we can't forget about that. We're talking all about doing the dirty pour technique using our awesome Fusion mineral paints. We are going to be doing 4 colors today. So we have Picket Fence, we have Little Star, we have Fort York Red, and Liberty Blue. And yes, you can do quite a few different pours with one of our tester size sample pots that you can get of those. Now here, we're in our workshop here at Next Time Around. We put all of our paints in these FIFO squeeze bottles. So if you see me grabbing one, like I'm going to be mixing one up for Little Star, I just have my paints poured into one of these containers. It's just easier for us teaching workshops. So that's what we're doing here. So to save time, I've already mixed up 3 of the colors. I've mixed up the Liberty Blue, the Fort York Red, and our Picket Fence White. And I'm going to mix one up with you so that you know exactly the ratios that we recommend. Now, just before we get started, if you can get one of these aluminum trays, this is a really great thing to collect all of your mess so that it doesn't get messy everywhere, but definitely protect your surface. If you have one of these tossable tablecloths, or some people will put down parchment paper, plastic, newspaper, whatever, but I love these aluminum trays because they collect a lot of the mess too. So you're going to see me have that here. And then I'm just using a little canvas. I don't even know, this is probably like an 8x10, I would imagine. And it already comes gessoed. So these are how most of the canvases come if you get them. Actually, I got these at Michael's, but you can get canvases at the dollar store. and they're not very expensive. And the only thing I really did to prep this is I taped the back with some painter's tape. You don't have to do that every time. It just makes it a little messy on the end. And then these thumbtacks, you can see kind of if Erica sort of zooms in, that I've pushed, or push pins, I guess they're called. I call them thumbtacks, into the ends just so that it stays off of the ground. So if I kind of put this back on the table, therefore it's elevated so that any of your drips that run over to the edge don't start pooling on the bottom. You can still get your finger under there to kind of wipe them off. And the painter's tape helps so that you've got a nice clean line. So just give me a second. I did this is a pour that I did just for fun, and that's the same thing, and I didn't take the back. So you can see, if you're ultimately learning how to do this pour technique because you plan to resell your or to sell your works of art, this may not be exactly how you want your pieces going out the door. So taping them off definitely gives it a little bit more of a professional clean finish. And when you're playing around and just practicing with different colors and different techniques, you know, you can actually reuse these if you did a pour that you're like, oh my gosh, that's awful, because that could happen. Just don't be afraid. You can just scrape that all off, let it dry, maybe give it a fresh coat of paint to give it a clean surface and start all over again. So you can reuse these if you're not happy with your pour. Okay, so next I'm gonna throw on some rubber gloves, just because I don't like when I get the paint all over my hands. It's just easier to take these on and off. Again, not necessary, but it is handy. So first off, I'm going to take one of my clear plastic glasses, those available everywhere. And what we're going to do is, our recipe for doing the paint is 2 parts of this Floetrol. Okay, so 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part of our Fusion mineral paint. And our mineral paints are great for doing these pouring mediums. So I'm going to tell you, I don't measure, I eyeball, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to use one of our little scoops here. I think there's this is a tablespoon scoop, and I'm just going to do this so that you can see as exact. I'm going to do 2 parts Floetrol. I'll just set that back down. And I'm just going to use the same scoop. Now, sometimes these come out and it's kind of, you almost wear it, so we kind of do this at on risk, but I'm just going to gently, whoop, there we go. See if that's going to squeeze. That wants to squeeze sideways. Looks like mustard. I'm just going to do 1 part of our little star paint. And then I'll just use this popsicle stick here. I'm just going to scrape that out a little bit. Okay, and I'll set that down. So that's your rough guideline. Again, I would be just pouring a little bit of Floetrol into the bottom of my cup and squeezing in some paint. And then you're going to mix this up. This doesn't take very long, but you definitely want it stirred. Okay? The other thing is when you're stirring it, you're not going to use like a little whisk or anything. You're not trying to whip it or put any air bubbles in it. Air bubbles are not your friend when it comes to doing these pours. So if you can do minimum air bubbles, that is best. And there's a little trick to getting rid of air bubbles, and that's where the rubbing alcohol comes in. I guess in the States they call it denatured. Is that how you say it? Denatured alcohol? I keep hearing them say that online. But we're going to use, we call it rubbing alcohol here. Child-proof safe. So if you put, and I already have a little squeeze thing here, if you put just a little bit of rubbing alcohol into your paint mixture, so you see how I just did a few drops there? That helps. You can almost see it. It will break, I don't know if they see that on the camera, the air bubbles on the surface, it starts to bring those to the top and they start popping. Not sure if that shows that in the camera, but a little bit of rubbing alcohol into your mixture definitely helps. And now, the most important part is getting the right consistency. Sometimes people will tell you it's like warm honey or melted chocolate. I find that always feels too thick of an analogy for me. You just want a good pour. See, this is too thick. See how it's drip, drip, drip? Now what you do, where'd that other part go, is I have another little cup here with a dopper, and I'm just adding some water. And again, I'm eyeballing it at this point because this is a consistency thing. And the colors are all gonna mix a little bit different. So as long as when you're done mixing, you kind of have an even stream. That's not bad. See how it keeps dripping a little bit? I think I just mixed this white one up. And I think the white one kind of gave us a really nice Even that's kind of getting, it's not too bad though. That's pretty close to the consistency. It's hard to tell when you just have a thin popsicle stick in it just running off. Now see how that's dripping like that? That's a good consistency. That's what you're aiming for. And there's times play with that. As an artisan, you want to try, what is it like when you have thinner pours? What's it like when you have thicker pours? Now, what I've discovered is that if your paint is too thick, when it dries, it could crack. You don't want that. So you don't want it too thick, but you also don't want it so thin that your paints aren't vibrant and you've broken down the consistency of your paint and the binding agents and everything that holds it together, and then it looks kind of faded and not as vibrant as the colors look right now. So it is a little bit of an art, but just play, okay? Like I said, you can reuse your canvases. So we've got our 4 colors mixed. Now I'm just going to take, we're doing what's called a dirty pour technique. So I'm just going to take another one of these cups, and what we're going to do is layer a few of these colors into each cup. So I'm going to start with the white. White is always a heavy color. So you tend to put white on the bottom, or black. You tend to a lot of times mix with white or black. Oh, and just wanted to point out, I'm using primary colors today because we know those mix together very nicely. So next, I'm going to add some of our Liberty Blue. Okay. There's no really rhyme or reason. Sometimes if you pour your paints from the top, they fall. I see how I'm holding it further away. It falls more to the bottom. So that was your Fort York Red. And now, look at even just that already in the cup. You know what I forgot to tell them about is the silicone. So maybe I'm going to do that. There is a little bit of silicone in some of these mixes already, but I didn't do that. We have to talk about adding cells. So what I'm going to do is in the yellow that I just mixed, oh, I'm glad I caught it here. I'm going to take, instead of doing a squeeze pump, I'm going to take some of this hair serum and just, see how I just did a couple little drips there? Not a lot. You don't need a lot. If you use the pump, you can just put like 1 pump in there. Or if you're using the treadmill silicone, you would just put a couple drops in. Okay, now you don't stir that too much, just a little bit of a stir, and that's going to give you a lot of cells. So I had done that already, and you can already see some of the cells forming in this cup. So next, I'm going to add some of that yellow. Okay, then we're going to go back again and add some white, and maybe I'll mix up the order of the colors this time. So now I will do, let's do yellow right away again. Just turn that around like that. Again, just to show you, sometimes it already looks beautiful in the actual container. Add a little bit more Liberty Blue. Now this feels like you're using a lot of paint, but you really aren't using that much paint. You've got this watered down with the Floetrol. And next, I'll do some red. And I think I'm just gonna leave it at that. Now, the general rule is that for every square inch that you are planning to paint, you need 1 milliliter of paint. So if this was a 8 millimeter cup and I was doing an 8 square inch canvas or whatever you are painting, that's what you will need. But again, Erica, if you can zoom in on that, is that not gorgeous already? So it's already starting to give you the cells and the breakdown and mix up on there. So this is what the dirty pour technique is. So now I'm going to take my canvas, I'm just going to set it on top and quickly do a flip. This is why they call it dirty pour. You can already see the colors on the side of the glass. So this is where it's random. There is a little bit of skill and a lot of luck to this, because if you mix colors that don't go well together, you're going to get a muddy mixture. So if you've got a lot of browns and blacks and grays, you got to watch that when they mix together that it doesn't just turn all shades of brown. Sometimes that looks really pretty too, but I'm doing the primary colors because I just think that they're going to go well together, and we'll probably, I'm hoping, get some greens, some purples, and some oranges by the way they mixed up. And I just let it sit there for a little bit, and so that it kind of comes down from the cup. Sometimes we tap it a little bit. And now a couple options. I can just lift this up, I can swirl it around, and that's what I think I'm just going to do. I think I'm just going to kind of pull it to the one end a bit and just pull it down. And look at all those cells forming already. Okay? Isn't that beautiful? So that's the part that I say is when you add the silicone, it's not all necessarily skill, but it's a lot of luck too. It looks so pretty when you do that. Now this is where the fun begins, because what we can do is we get to move this around and we stretch those cells so they become bigger. And you can see sometimes on little ones there's like multiple colors inside each one. And you're going to find that they continue to come to the surface. So what's happening is the silicone is rising to the top of our painting and it's making these cells appear. You can just see little things. So I get kind of close to the edge. Sometimes when you have an area you really like, you're like, I don't want that to disappear by rolling it, but you take your time. So I'm getting this one, like, can you see that from the angle you're at there? I should maybe go this way. I'm just going close to the edge. And I kind of put my hand there, that's why you use the gloves, and then you can kind of push it back. You want your cells to run over the edge because that looks so pretty that way too. You see how I'm bringing this back down this way? So here is an example of how the colors kind of got a little muddy. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, it depends on your taste. And then you can see as I'm dripping it this way, we're stretching the cells a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of hold that there. Our goal is to try to cover as much of the canvas as we can. And now I'll go back down into this corner. See how we're gaining these cells up at the top, stretching back out again as I go down to this corner? There's different techniques for doing these edges. Sometimes we have a little pie, it's like from baking and stuff, that you can do on your edges. We'll do that in a future video. I just wanted to show it. Now, see, there's something stuck there. It's like a blob, must have been something in my paint. So we'll just pull that off. You might not have been able to see that in the camera too well. See, these are this corner, I don't really like this colors, so the fact that I can stretch those over the edge and kind of make that mucky color go away, I'm okay with. So I kind of get that to that edge, and then we're left with this. Now, I really am liking these blues up here. So I'm hoping that I don't lose that too much by pulling it this way. Sometimes too, if you have leftovers that have dripped onto the tray, you can kind of get that with your finger and add it. What it does is it helps the paint slide. Sometimes people will add an entire slip coat of paint. Again, that helps your paint sort of glide. You'll see a lot of times we cheat and start helping it along. So we sort of pull it that way so that it can kind of go. Again, I gotta watch that that red doesn't come and just completely get rid of all of my my blues there, which it feels like it wants to do. I'm gonna pull that back. What I can do is to see if I have anything left in my cup, which I do. So I'm just going to add some more right there. There's a girl that does a YouTube tutorials and she always goes, because I can. I did that, you know why? Because I can. It's kind of funny. She's great though. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but if you start going on YouTube and looking up some tutorials, you'll see lots of great examples of this dirty pour technique. So there you go. I'm just kind of trying to finish off the edges a little bit. Like even the cup afterwards looks really pretty. And I get my drips. Again, I can kind of run that because you don't want any bare canvas on the sides. So if you see this way, I'm gonna try to see there's a little bit of spots there. Again, I can just take some of the paint on my finger, try to get that from that angle. Does it look like I got it all? This looks pretty good this way. Some drips there. I'm losing my blue a bit. Oh, there's just some down there. So there we go. So I'm just gonna tilt that back that way just a little bit more at the end here. Just so that I can try to see if I can get some of that blue to come back. And I'm gonna move my cup. And that is a basic dirty pour. Now I'm just gonna set that back down. Again, look at how yucky my hands get. I'm just gonna rub my finger down the bottom of the edge kind of where I had that green tape initially, just because I don't want a lot of the paint to pool there. However, it's not that big of a deal in the sense of I'm going to be peeling that tape off anyway. But again, it's just making sure that you did indeed get all of your edges, and it's a little hard to tell. But I could stop right here and let this dry and it'd be pretty. Afterwards, I can add a stencil to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what happens with the blowtorch. So I'm just going to take my gloves off. Woo. Don't do it over your canvas and throw those in the garbage. And now we have one of these butane blowtorches. What the blowtorch does, you are not trying to make your paint dry. You're simply trying to bring the silicone to the surface and get the air bubbles to pop. And by adding quickly a little bit of heat, you actually help the silicone come to the surface and you produce, in many cases, more cells. So I'm just going to turn this on for a second. It looks scary, but it's not. And I'm just going to quickly go over top. And a lot of times you'll see more cells than you can actually see. I don't know if you can see it on the camera where it's actually popping all those tiny little air bubbles. So I'm not staying in one spot too long. I'm just quickly rubbing it over on the edges too. Get it really quick. Just get all those air bubbles pop and see if any cells come out. And that's it. So I hope you liked the very first video of acrylic pouring and the dirty pour technique, all the basic supplies you need, how you can get some really beautiful pours when you use our fusion mineral paints, which they're available in all sorts of towns all around the world. Definitely check out fusionmineralpaint.com. You can click on the find a location to find a retailer near you. If you're near us, we're in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. We carry all of the colors, and we just hope that you have fun. We call it getting dirty with the dirty pour technique. It is definitely something that's not difficult to do, so we just encourage you to give it a hand. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next video.